So, Jules, I know that you're going to guide a practice soon for us that is centered around the womb space. I wonder if you could start by telling us a bit about the potency of this area, why it's such a central part of your work at the moment.
Thank you. Well, it's always been a central part of the work, and I guess to contextualize it, I have to go back. I have to go back to when I was a child and my really early experiences of the natural world. And my childhood was a very difficult childhood. It was, well, yeah, just say very difficult childhood. And the moments that I found like relief or solace from the pain that I was in and everything that was going on around me was in nature, like the moment that I smelt a rose, or in the garden, making little tea parties out of mud, or you know watching insects and making little pathways for ants through the grass and all of that. And there was something in those moments where I was completely immersed. All the pain went away, all the suffering went away, and there was this experience of I am one. It's like I'm at home somehow. I feel, I mean, I didn't have this language then, but if I speak about it now from the language that I have, it was like feeling that I'd come home to the mystery, feeling that I'd come home, feeling that I was with the entire cosmos somehow in watching this ant crawling across the grass. I got interested in that as I got older. There was a period then of my childhood where I completely just stopped doing all of that because, everyone around me was saying I was, bonkers when I'd start talking about how the leaves were talking to me and how the flowers were talking to me. And then when I was about 15 or 16, I came across shamanism and I started to explore that. And that gave me the realization, actually I'm not mad. Actually, this is sanity in an insane world. This is my anchor. And then in my late teens, this one time I was sitting in the rain at this party, completely, psychedelic experience. And I was sitting in the garden and it was raining and I was sitting on the ground and I was feeling every single drop of rain on my body. And it was just, again, this connection to source. And I had a period at the time and I looked down and I noticed there was this river of blood on the ground that was kind of mingling with the rainwater. And I looked down and I suddenly, in that moment, something opened in my womb. And I made this connection between the cycle that was happening in my womb was the same as the cycle and the rhythms that I was existing in, that was the rain that was falling on me in that moment, that was the stars that I'd seen in the night sky, that was the turning of the leaves in autumn, that was the sun coming up in the morning. And it wasn't really cognitive. It was like this visceral embodied experience of how what was happening in my body as a woman, this cyclical nature that was happening in my womb was an exact mirror for the cyclical nature of the cosmos. And I sat there, I don't know how long I sat there for, hours, all night, I think, till finally they dragged me in because apparently I was shivering and soaking wet. But I didn't care. It was just awesome and it blew me right open. And that was really the beginning of the journey of realizing that my womb, the cycles in my womb, and how that literally informs everything that I'm doing in my life, every movement of my body, every desire to eat something, every impulse to be sexual, every creative thought, every breath, just everything I could feel was governed by this cycle. So I then started to explore shamanism from the land that I was living on, which was Ireland and England, and realizing that the whole Celtic teachings are exactly following this. And, our deep time ancestors, who obviously were completely embodied. I mean, the idea of not being embodied it probably wouldn't have been in their vocabulary. It wouldn't have been a concept that they would understand. They didn't even have a word for I in the Celtic language. There was no sense or concept of individual separateness. So if you said, how are you? You would say, my village is well. The land is well. My children and the family are well or sick. Or if you wouldn't say my child is sick, you wouldn't go to the doctor and say my child is sick. Or if you did, the village would go, the village is sick. Because the village understood that for one child to be well, it takes the village to be well and the land to be well, and for us to be in resonance and harmony. Our bodies are the guide map back to the wisdom that we need to know how to move forward at this time on earth, and what's happening at this time on earth, and how this strap line of humanity of we need to control sickness rather than, and it's more of the same. We need to control nature. We must control nature. We can control nature. How fantastic are we? This whole aspiration, and then of course controlling our bodies, because we are nature. And what we aspire to now in terms of moving away from the naturalness of what our body wants to do, moment by moment. So the women's work, we offer this initiatory journey for women, and it takes women deep into this cyclical nature and where we live. We bought this land many years ago, and it's a dedicated space for that work, and it's literally in the middle of a forest in the hills in the borders of Wales, with 2 rivers either side of us. So the nature becomes the teacher by simply immersing ourselves around the hearth fire, by learning how to cook on a fire, by gathering water, by having to carry water, by being in the rain and going, well, let's not just go to a heated room with central heating. It's like the body, we immediately come into our bodies just in the necessity of existence, rather than sitting in a hermetically sealed room with central heating going, let's try and understand what our bodies are about. It's like, no, let's get and be there in it. So it kind of works on different levels, because you've got the physical body, and like like you're embodying now, like how we feel everything, even the words that I'm speaking. So you might say these words are air. They come through the element of air. And you might say, well, words aren't really a physical thing, but they're still the embodiment of life, because through the element of air, there's a transmission of energy that's happening as I speak and as it lands with you. Even, because how is that speech traveling? Is it through a cable? Is it through a wire? Are we connected? No. Well, we are, but it's a pretty random connection. It travels through the etheric field, through the cosmos, through something that we cannot describe or understand, but we feel it in every moment. And that's why communication is so powerful. So for me, when we talk about embodiment, we are talking about the bone and the flesh and the blood and the organs of us, but we're also talking about the energy body and the mystery body, because the body of nature, as far as the Celtic teachings are concerned, is God is not an abstract figure that lives on a cloud. God is infused in every blade of grass, in every drop of rain, in every cow turd, in every piece of broccoli, in the feather of a bird. It's like the mystery spirit is infused in life itself. It's not separate. So if we're to exist in this body, we are an embodiment of the mystery. The mystery is moving through our blood all the time, through our heart and through our wombs, through our womb consciousness. So the work around the womb is primarily for women, because women are born with this physical embodiment of that. However, what I have seen over 30 years of doing this work is that even if women don't have a womb, or for some reason they no longer have a womb, that cosmic imprint is still there. We are still guided and governed by that in what I would call like a natural law, and a cosmic law is cosmology. And even many, many, many men speak about feeling an energetic womb imprint, and they can feel these rhythms and pulses and cycles that are happening. So I just want to kind of welcome everybody to work in this way with womb consciousness. Of course, there's a potency through the physiology of that because of the hormonal imprint, but it's so much bigger than that. It's what I call wombology. It's like cosmology that's embedded in the cyclical nature of our blood, and there's a spiritual death that happens every month as we, if we don't fertilize an egg and go into the process of creating life, there's a death that happens in the lining of the womb falling away. And that's a spiritual death. It's not an actual death because nothing has been fertilized. Well, it might be. But the key thing I'm pointing to here is a spiritual death and a rebirth. And the reason for me why this is so important to listen to this rhythm and cycle is because this is what it's like, this is the spiritual practice for womb consciousness. It's the spiritual practice for woman. And each month we get to go through a death and a rebirth. We get to go on a vision quest. We don't have to go up a mountain and light a fire and starve ourselves for 3 days and, do all of that and take ayahuasca. I mean, they're all great things. They all are a possibility. But actually, every single month we are offered this gateway into holy space, into the temple of death, to cleanse and purify, to transform, to compost ways in which we overrode ourselves in the previous month in that ovulatory movement. And we can cleanse and purify, we can let ourselves die, literally, dream and vision in the next 28-day cycle or 48 days, however long each woman's cycle is. And this is powerful. This is what's happening in nature. But in our modern world, we have come to aspire only spring and summer. Spring and summer is what we're all meant to be living in. Winter, autumn and winter is kind of, let's just get through that. Doesn't really have a lot to offer. We're just waiting for summer again. In the way we work with crops and growing food and manipulating plants, it's like it's all about, how can we create a crop that could produce food all year round? And then women get burnt out because we're not honouring rest. We're not honouring rejuvenation. We're not honouring the time where the seed needs to go into the earth and it needs to sit there and receive this transmission of the mystery of spirit into the fabric of its shell, penetrate through that, give this transmission, this vision of you can be birthed into a mighty oak or an apple tree or a flower or whatever it might be. And the seed knows that. The seed doesn't go, I must get past this point and get on with being a big, it's like it knows that it just has to surrender and allow the alchemical process of the mystery of death and rebirth to cycle it. But we have lost that as women. We have lost that. We feel guilty when we rest. But actually the bleed time is our spiritual holy space of transformation.